the Attorney General has come out with this new strategy to combat this domestic terrorism. Now, that's the code he's using. What they're talking about is white supremacy. That's what they're talking about, all right? But they have to say it in this way because I guess that's more digestible to the mainstream. And here's what the Biden administration is doing. Here's what Biden said. He said, on my first day in office, I directed my national security team to confront the rise in domestic terrorism with the necessary resources and resolve. Today, I am releasing the first ever national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. In a speech announcing the policy Tuesday, Attorney General Merrick Garland said he would reinvigorate the Domestic Terrorism Executive Committee that was first created by Attorney General Reno in 1995 after the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay, that's good stuff. Who would have a problem with that? All right, obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene does. Here's some of the video from that press conference.
In response to these many and serious challenges, the national strategy today seeks to confront the threat from all angles. The strategy rests on 4 pillars, each of which is essential to support the whole. First, our efforts to understand and share information regarding the full range of domestic terrorism threats. Second, our efforts to prevent domestic terrorists from successfully recruiting, inciting, and mobilizing Americans to violence. Third, our efforts to deter and disrupt domestic terrorist activity before it yields violence. And finally, the long-term issues that contribute to domestic terrorism in our country must be addressed to ensure that this threat diminishes over generations to come.
They said, okay, the best we can do is try to diminish the threat. I actually like that 4th pillar because in that 4th pillar, when he's talking about what actually causes this, he's talking about people like Donald Trump, right? Trump is one of the people that causes the radicalization of citizens to become domestic terrorists. That's part of the equation that you have to combat. So literally, you now have a federal government who has proclaimed that individuals who radicalize citizens are in fact part of the domestic terrorism problem. Ben?
Oh, then they might want to go to Silicon Valley. They might want to go have a chat with YouTube and Google and Facebook and all the rest of them.
Come on, brother.
Because those algorithms are definitely doing their part to take people down that pathway. But to what Merrick Garland is saying here, the real question is like, they know what they're dealing with. And you said it at the top of this, Dr. Richey. You said that he's saying code. This is white supremacy. This is rage inside of whiteness that is so angry and so furious with the fact that they can't even have the mildest of inconveniences of learning someone's pronouns. Like for God forbid, for God forbid you have to do that. But let alone they can't just get away with the racism like they used to and the bigotry and the sexism. That said, America's got to make a choice. Either it's going to survive as a democracy or it's going to allow white supremacy and patriarchy to continue as it is.
And one of those dynamics that we must take seriously if we are to survive as a democracy is this. Do we allow people to be above the law? Do we allow anyone to be above the law? That is really a fundamental question of any functional democracy. Because if you do allow people to be above the law, go ahead and say it. Just say it. Don't say that no one is above the law as a talking point, and then there's clear evidence that certain people can violate the law, and they are in fact above the prosecution or the penalty that would come with that. But this is what democracy should be about: transparency. It should be about connecting to the sentiment of the citizen, holding individuals accountable that violate the public trust, not holding them to a lower standard of accountability. But if you engage in public trust activity, you are held to a higher standard of accountability. We only have a couple of minutes left in the segment, but Ben, I want to give you the last word before we go to our break and bring back our I Wish a Karen Would segment.
Yeah, no. it is a satisfaction that we cannot hold the most powerful people in the world accountable to anything. Like, I mean, I guess that's to be expected if you look through patterns in history. That said, we are at a stage where we can not only hold this country accountable, but we can hold white supremacy accountable. And this is why we're seeing the death pangs of white supremacy. What we saw on January 6th, it could either be the death pangs of white supremacy or just a recruiting manifesto. And the government has to decide what they want to do with it.
And this is the very delicate place we find ourselves in right now. This country is at a crossroad, and this country can either A, become exactly what we believe it can be, or B, revert back to its original DNA, which was rooted and grounded in an ideology that says you can own a human being if they have black skin.